Back in November of 2023, I released my first comic called The Glamdroids, and I'm here to share with you all my experience. Since this is my first video talking in the channel, I want to introduce myself. Hello, my name is Valentin Gallo, also known as Vale. And it's not Vale, it's Vale, like Valentine's Day, but without the other letters. Anyway, as a Five Nights at Freddy's fan back in 2022, I used to consume all possible medias about it, and because of that, I took notice of a trend on TikTok of people making human versions of the glam rock band. And because I'm an artist, I wanted to make designs of my own. Those designs ended up very... horrible. But back then, I thought they were wonderful. A year later, however, I felt like redoing them. My biggest issue with them was that they just looked generic. They looked like people wearing clothes inspired by the characters, like they were wearing costumes. They didn't look like the characters turned into human. They had no personality or uniqueness, and so that's what I aim to fix with my new designs. I had a unique approach to each character. My plan was simple, to represent their personality and role in the Pizzaplex in their clothing. I'm the best! With Roxy's design, I wanted something that tied together her fashionable persona with her racing persona, giving her a leather racing jacket, biker gloves, and high-knee boots. One of the issues I had with my previous version of Roxy was that she lacked the presence of the ears and tail. And although it sounds silly, those were an important part of Roxy's original animatronic silhouette, and I wanted to remedy that. So, my solution was to give her a makeup band with two pointy ears and a scarf tied around her waist. Now, she had the ears and tail that were missing in her previous design. For Glamrock Chica, I planned for her to be a hyper-energetic fitness party girl, and my approach for her design was different from the others. I wanted to exaggerate her silhouette. I took the leg warmers her original design featured and expanded them into huge fluffy warmers. As I looked for references of 80s fitness clothes, I saw a picture of a woman wearing a jean jacket over her gym clothes, and so I gave that to Chica and exaggerated to resemble the shoulder pads of her original silhouette. Her hair and accessories were pretty straightforward from there. I simply gave her what felt very 80s.
Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown.
My vision for Glamrock Freddy was of a space jock. I gave him a varsity jacket with two colors that resembled the shape of his stomach hatch, along with a bright red and blue lightning zipper to match the one in his animatronic form, and a mullet hair inspired by 80s hairdos. After setting on those parts of his design, I got stumped on two things: his hat and his pants. And here's where having a large library of reference comes to help. While I was playing Dead by Daylight, I came across a character called White, and one of his cosmetics features a mechanic's jumpsuit tied around his waist. I remember that was something I came across before, and I always wanted to feature it in a design, and so now I had the perfect opportunity. Since Freddy has a space background, I decided to give him an astronaut suit that would be tied around his waist, as well as astronaut shoes. As for his hat, Freddy's most popular for his top hat, but I couldn't figure out a way to add that element in his design. A real top hat looked out of place with his modern clothes, and a small stylistic top hat just looked silly. Luckily, around that time, Monster High had released their Ultimate Secrets doll line, and one of the characters, Claudine Wolf, had a bucket hat. It was the perfect solution. It had a similar structure to a top hat, as well as it fit the modern style of Freddy's clothes. With that, Freddy's design was complete. Last but not least, Monty's design was pretty straightforward. My vision for him was for a preppy golfing metalhead. As I scrolled through Pinterest, I immediately came up with what I wanted him to look like. Rocking spiky accessories and a bright checkered vest, his design ended up very graphic. And if I'm being completely honest, out of all four of them, his design is my favorite. As I worked on the designs, my mind started to wander. I began imagining what would be the story of Security Breach if the animatronic characters were instead humans. And that led me to think of many fun scenarios where Gregory would interact with them and how the story would adapt with this new element. And so I felt inspired. I wanted to share with other people these ideas. I thought about writing them out and releasing, thought about making short comic strips, but I knew if I really wanted to engage people, it needed to be something big. And that's when I decided to make the comic. Writing the story was simple. After all, it's not like I had to write everything from scratch. It was a fan comic, adapting the game's events, so there was already material there to be used. The way I began writing was probably not the most efficient, but I started out by watching a playthrough of the game and writing everything down. Every line and action possible. Then after that, I went back to the beginning and started changing things to fit the story. Like I mentioned, the premise of the story was to have the animatronic characters be replaced by humans. So I had to change their actions to human counterpart actions. Instead of Freddy malfunctioning on stage, he had a seizure. Instead of Gregory jumping into Freddy's stomach hatch to hide, he hid in a pizza delivery bag. There were also practical changes, like cutting the party pass quest from the beginning. Some parts of the story just don't make it back into the comic because sometimes they just only work in a game format. The quest was a tutorial section in the game, teaching you the controls, but in a comic, there are no controls to be taught. You're reading the story, and so I cut that sequence to not damage the flow of the story. Spoilers ahead, jump to the time on screen. An important part of the story of Security Breach is when the characters become shattered. When I looked online for the human versions of the glam rock band, a lot of the shattered designs consisted of gory, bloody, and visceral imagery that I think can look cool, but sometimes felt too cheap. And so I came up with an idea for my own designs. I imagined them being uncanny, like broken porcelain dolls, no longer human, with wires and tubes and okay, oh, this is all a spoiler. Never mind that, but because of this idea, I decided to make the characters robots, or well, decided to make them androids to be precise. I'm aware the title of the comic kinda gives this plot away, but I still think some people may be surprised when the reveal happens. And regardless, it's not a major mystery, as it gets revealed in the first chapter, so... And to answer a common question, the public doesn't know about the Glamdroids. Fazbear Entertainment is trying to sell to people that these are real people and not robots similar to the ones they had in the past. For sanity purposes, I chose to write from the beginning of the game till the moment we go down the daycare slide and split the story into chapters. That way I could take a break and collect people's feedback and improve on things in the following chapters. But mostly I just didn't want to continuously draw 600 comic pages.
Back with another milk. Help!
I had finished the characters' designs and the story for the first chapter, so all I had to do now was draw the comic. Easy. I created a new canvas on Thigh and began drawing a very rough sketch of every single page on each separate layer, changing some things here and there from the script, and just overall drawing what my mind imagined the story being like. Since I have a very strong imagination, as I read through the script, my brain would just visualize it all like a movie, so all I had to do was translate that into panels. Making the layout of panels, some rough placements of speech bubbles, it was all done. I saved every single page as a separate PNG. We ended up with a total of 50 pages! Woohoo! With Rust completed, it was time to clean it all up. Around this time, I started thinking, what would the posting schedule be? I wanted to start posting in November, so 50 pages. That would take a while for the first chapter to be completed. If I posted every single day, it would be done in a month and a half, but I would need to pump out pages very quickly. If I posted every other day, the last page would come out by February. I didn't like neither of those schedules. I wanted to finish the comic by the end of the year, but it would be too stressful to post every day, and posting every other day would take too long to develop the story. Not to mention, either way I posted, my entire account would be taken over by the comic. I want to be able to post anything else during this time, but thankfully I came up with a neat schedule. I could post 6 pages per weekend. I had 50 pages and 8 weekends ahead of me, so if I posted 6 pages per weekend and 8 on the last one, it would be done by the end of the year. And so that's what I did, and it all went great, flawless, no issues here. Okay, so it didn't go exactly as I planned. Before I started posting the comic, I had finished 7 pages, since I wasn't completely sure of the schedule until the very last second, and so the first weekend went great. I managed to post all the 6 pages. On the following week, I had to start finishing the next 5 pages, since I already had one ready from the previous week. Easy peasy. I finished them and then I posted on the weekend. The next weekend comes around and things start getting complicated. But I still managed to post them on time, and then the 4th weekend happened and no Fazbear. I mean, I worked until the very last second. The moment I finished them, I posted. So great. November was done and I managed to follow the schedule. Comes December and... Yeah, December didn't work out at all. This whole time, not only was I working on the comic, but I was also working on commissions. So I had to juggle both things at once, but obviously prioritizing commissions since they were my source of income. I don't think I managed to get a single weekend right on December. One week I posted every day, and then the other one I posted 4 pages on the weekend and then 2 pages during the week. It was just overall a mess, and it was stressful. Who knew making a fully lined, colored, and rendered comic was gonna take so much work? Okay, yeah, that should have been expected, but thankfully, I managed to do it all. 2023 was done, and I had finished the Glamdroids Chapter 1, and even though I had to rush some parts, the results were fantastic. I outdone myself. After spending a whopping 160 hours, I could finally be done with the Glamdroids until the next chapter. Now I finally had time for myself and... Okay, yeah, I didn't take that long of a break. I mean, I took the first week of January to vegetate and do nothing, but I already had my sights on the next goal. I kept running into an issue. People kept asking me where could they find all the pages for the comic, and the only real place I could direct people to was DeviantArt. It was definitely not ideal. And I had been posting the comic on 3 different social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt, but they're not really a proper place to post them. On DeviantArt, I was able to create a folder for the comic and put the pages in order, which is neat, but on Instagram and Twitter, the feed shows up in chronological order. So the last pages I posted are the first ones people will see when they check my profile. So it was hard for new readers to find and read the entire comic without disturbance. Some friends suggested I should make a webtoon, but webtoon supposedly doesn't allow fan content there, so it couldn't work. Every webcomic tutorial out there will tell you that you should set up a site for your comic, and it's good advice. That way you have full control of where your comic is kept, and new readers are able to find the comic and read it with ease. However, most of the tutorials I watched didn't give any recommendations for platforms to use to make their sites. The plan was for it to not only be a place for you to read the comic, but also something interactive and immersive, as if the site was a real one. I sketched out a layout for the site and started working on it, and I have to say, it was pretty easy. Some parts were more difficult than others. Sometimes the options felt too limited, sometimes I had to make a whole mess for things to work out, but ultimately, I was able to recreate my idea pretty well on Google Sites, and that was it.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
The Glamdroids was an incredible project that I've been working on for the past few months. In conclusion, I definitely learned a lot since I started this project. I learned a lot of art skills, how to manage my layers more efficiently, how to minimize detail without taking a toll on the overall quality of the work, and a few more art tricks. I learned a few key things about storytelling and formatting the comic pages. I learned that next time I post a comic in places like Instagram, I should maybe post multiple pages in one post so my feed isn't completely taken over by it. And I learned plenty of other things to keep in mind as I work in the future chapters. For example, that I should probably have the entire chapter, or at least a big chunk of it, finished before I started posting. Working on every page until the very last second was insane. As much as I'm proud of the results, working on the project had been horrendous for my mental health. I was incredibly anxious and stressed at the time because of this decision to overwork myself to keep up with this self-imposed schedule. And I hope this can serve as a lesson to anyone watching this to not do the same. Moving forward, I definitely want to change more of the story from the original game. The beginning of the game and Chapter 1 were both introductions to the universe, so there wasn't a need for that many changes, but from this point onward, I can start having more fun and playing around with how the story plays out. And with all of that being said, I would like to mention that Chapter 2 is out! Yes, it's true. Tomorrow at 12 PM Brazilian time, I'll be posting the first page of the Glamdroids Chapter 2. You'll be able to find it on my social media as well as the site. Speaking of the site, there will also be a few more updates to the site for you guys to check it out. If you all like this video, I might make one talking about Chapter 2, but it all depends on you guys. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. I hope you guys will enjoy the comic if you haven't read it yet, and I hope that you will enjoy Chapter 2 as it comes out. That is all for now. See you on the flip side.